So we welcome in our good buddy Matt George of the Locked On Kings podcast. I know you wanted to before we dive into the Kings.
I just want to know what everybody's thinking. This is a big game. It's probably the game of the playoffs
So far. Yeah, Philly
and New York.
Owners bought 2,000 tickets.
What y'all think about that? That's kind of crazy.
Do what you got to do.
That's embarrassing for Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think I'd be a little more prideful than
your
that.
fan base should be a little
what
more
you
solidified.
Do. No problem with it.
You think that series is better than Lakers Nuggets was?
Well, yeah, that one's over.
Well, that's fair. I mean,
Matt really enjoyed that series, though.
I did enjoy watching the Lakers lose, but man,
that was a good series.
Yeah, it was.
Jamal Murray was unbelievable in that series. 2 massive game winners in that series, plus Jokic doing his thing, Braun doing his thing, AD good and then terrible. Made me laugh.
Matt,
Austin Reeves even balled out.
I'm gonna put it on wax. It's gonna be official now. It's gonna be official. I thought about it, but now it is official. I'm picking Minnesota to win that series.
I like that.
Minnesota in 6.
I like that. I don't pick, but I'm not going to fight that at all.
Yeah, Minnesota in 6. And I think the Knicks ended tonight.
I don't think they do.
Ooh, that'd be crazy, bro.
Do.
Saturday night, the Garden, Game 7. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think Philly gets them tonight.
Somebody,
Joel Embiid near death goes out there for 40.
No, you want to talk about jumping out the window? I saw a tweet today. Come on, this is ridiculous. Somebody said Tyrese Maxey is everything they wanted Allen Iverson to be.
Bro, oh my God,
jeez,
that's worse than the stuff we were fighting about yesterday.
I said, "Come on, man, I'm done with Twitter. I'm off. I'm off."
What were y'all fighting about yesterday?
Oh, he came in here talking about trade Joel Embiid. Embiid
I said
sucks.
You need to have a conversation.
Build around Tyrese Maxey. Embiid is trash. That whole thing.
Don't listen to this guy, man.
That's how I remember
Matt, this is what I said. Now, Matt, he is a GM type guy. I said, the end of the season, this don't have to get out to the public. We're not Matt Ishbia this whole thing or nothing like that. But we're having a conversation here as the Sixers brass. Hey man, what do we think about Joel? Do we think we kind of shop him now quietly and see what we could get? Or do we just say, no, we're not messing with Joel, we'll write this thing off? The whole precipice of it all is I don't know if he can stay healthy for a whole season and playoff season anymore. And that's supposed to be the guy you're building around. That's kind of tough. Like you're basing everything on him, and he breaks down every spring.
I think, like, to me, you would have to root against what's good for the player in order for yourself to look good in that scenario. Because if you're trading Joel Embiid away, you're essentially betting exactly what you said, that he's not going to ever be the same again because of his health. So you're betting against the dude going forward. Because if not, then you became the general manager. Daryl Morey became the general manager who traded away the MVP a year after he won the award. And built around Tyrese Maxey, who most improved player. Tyrese Maxey was amazing in Game 5. I mean, he's a ton of fun to watch this year. He's an absolute breakout star, and he's a fantastic story. But I think a lot of also what makes Tyrese Maxey do what Tyrese Maxey does is because there's always a concern about what Joel Embiid's doing as well, right? So I don't think the Sixers, I don't know what you get for Joel Embiid. You very rarely see megastar for megastar type trades, so you're probably getting a massive package of draft compensation and stuff like that. Tyrese Maxey isn't carrying draft picks to playoffs and to being competitive next year. So I just think I personally wouldn't do it. I know Joel Embiid is breaking down, which really, really sucks. I also do think there's never really been loyalty in the NBA when it comes to how organizations treat their players when they start to break down. But I think there is a level of loyalty owed from the 76ers to Joel to continue to support him even when he's going through all this stuff. I get it's a business too. I personally wouldn't do it, but if they even floated it out there just to see what his value could be, I guess I wouldn't roll my eyes at that.
I'll say this. Firmly disagree with all of this. Mm-hmm. Except I don't disagree with Matt, but he is 30. He's 30. And 30 for a guy that size is a hell of a lot different than 30-year-old Steph Curry. those are not the same things. But still, I don't think I'd do it. At least not yet. I wouldn't do it. Matt, how's the off season for you and the Locked On crew going right now?
Well, I mean, Locked On's getting some love today, and I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen the awful announcing article that they did on the success of the Locked On Podcast Network and the success of local podcasting, brought a smile to my face too, because Locked On has been so good to me now in the 7 or 8 years that I've been doing it, something like that. Wow. I honestly don't remember. I'm approaching, I think late or mid May, I'll hit 1,800 episodes of Locked On Kings that I've done, which is unbelievable. And like, so the success for me, how it's built my career and allowed me to move on from bad situations and turn them into great situations has been pretty amazing for me. And plus, like, the model works because fans demand more content for their teams, especially Sacramento Kings fans who are beyond loyal and beyond dedicated. That's why I'm so lucky to be able to host a podcast for a small market team, air quotes, but that is so unbelievably passionate that maybe the numbers aren't the same as what the Lakers get just from the general fan, but the reaction and interaction is, I think, 10 times better. So Locked On is great. Unfortunately, though, I was hoping to still be doing playoff podcasts at this point in time. And I'm pissed off that I have to care about the NBA draft lottery again. I did not want to worry about that. And to be honest, guys, I was going into this summer fully intending to have to struggle for content unrelated to the draft because I didn't think the Kings were going to have a draft pick. So the draft content will pick up eventually. I don't care too much about this draft class because in general, I don't think the Sacramento Kings should care too much about this draft class. I said in a recent episode that I did like gut feeling kind of predictions for this offseason. One of my gut feelings is that the Kings will move that pick on draft night. It just makes too much sense for them to do that. So I think that's what's coming, but we'll get into the draft a little bit here or there. But I wish I was talking about playoff basketball. That's for sure.
For sure, man. And salute to you. I mean, you've done a fantastic job with Locked On Kings. You know, I listen to that show all the time, and especially when I listen to it like on June 13th, and you've got an I'm like, bro, I don't know if I could do this. This guy's a machine, man, coming out 5 days a week, you know, when there's nothing going on, or saying the same thing over and over again, but making it sound like new content. You do a phenomenal job with it, and keep killing. I feel like you might know this, but like it feels like while the Kings aren't the Lakers or the Warriors in terms of like fan interest and stuff like that, it feels like they'd be pretty high. You know, you hear Bobby Marks talking about, you know, the 2 responses I got the most for all season videos was the Raptors and the Kings. Like everybody was just Raptors and it feels like the Kings fan base and interest is one of the higher ones around the league. Are you able to see that with numbers and stuff like that?
Well, I think the Locked On model is made for a fan base like the Sacramento Kings. It's made for a fan base that just cannot get enough and does not want to get enough. And more importantly, not only do they want the conversation to continue, they want to be a part of the conversation, which is what, I mean, it's very unique with Locked On Kings because you tune into an episode with a solo host talking to himself or talking to a camera for 30 minutes. But Kings fans are so interactive to where if they choose to, they'll be involved in the conversation, whether it's in the comment section. I mean, the Chatty House is a perfect example of that. You got 200, 300, 400 people every single day tuning in every single day. Even during the summertime, if there's 20 minutes of Kings talk in a 4-hour show where there's going to be draft talk for the NFL and baseball talk, and you guys have been doing a lot of like NBA TV deal talk, like this market, it loves sports content. It's also not a coincidence too when you see the ratings come out every single year about Monday Night Football ratings or UFC Fight Night ratings or boxing ratings and stuff. Sacramento is always on that list. Always. Like, this city loves its sports content, and unfortunately there are people in positions of power in this city who have told me to my face that nobody cares about sports in Sacramento, and they couldn't be more wrong. Like, to me, this city loves sports content. They'll continue to take in that sports content. And the best part I think about the Sacramento media is that for the most part, we are competitors, but a lot of us work together, especially in the Sacramento Kings kind of network of things. Like I have great relationships with so many people from so many different networks. We're on each other's shows. We try and help each other out when we're able to, and come on each other's products and work together and talk together because we all are sharing the same audience that keeps wanting more and more and more and more content. So in that way, I think all of us, you guys included, were very blessed to work in this city when most people would disregard it as, oh, it's Sacramento, not LA or not the Bay. Sacramento cares. Sacramento loves its sports content, and the Bay Area transfers coming over are only helping that.
I can't believe you've been doing the podcast that long, man. That's crazy. That's amazing. You're a big TV star now. And you're doing the podcast.
No, we don't got to do that.
You are a big time TV star.
We don't got to do that.
Yeah, you don't have to downplay it, man. That's your success. Where your blessings, as Mark Jones would say.
That's right.
Where your blessings. We haven't talked a lot of Kings today. I'm meant to. Have you dove into like what this offseason might look like outside of Malik? Obviously, everything around Sacramento centers around Malik Monk. But have you started to talk with your audience about like, then what?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of built out an episode that I did earlier this week just of kind of gut feelings about how this offseason is going to go, like I mentioned earlier. And Malik, I saved Malik for the end of that because Malik is the center and he's been the topic of conversation for like the last 6, 7, 8 episodes. So save Malik towards the end. But like, I'm just trying to be realistic about things. And I'm basing a lot of it off of comments and vibes and the feels that I got from our end of season press conferences, especially with Monty McNair and Mike Brown. And guys, I genuinely believe, I do not know if this is the right approach or not. The vibe and the takeaways that I got from the podcast, it could be a smokescreen, but I don't believe it is that the Kings don't feel like they need a star to be where they want to go. Like, I think a lot of Kings fans for months have been talking themselves into, okay, this offseason, the big trade's going to happen. This offseason, the big move's going to happen. And I've even been guilty of that too. And trust me, there were times when we were in the cellar of the bad in this past season, losing to teams like Detroit and stuff like that, or even losing 6 times to the New Orleans Pelicans, where I'm sitting there shaking my head going, God, the Kings need another guy. And they certainly could use another guy. But I don't think, compared to maybe the desperation of some other teams this offseason, I expect the Kings to be involved in conversations because Monty always wants to be involved in conversations. But I'm at this point in time, I'm not expecting a big splash. And I think a more middle of the line move or two is likely. It all starts with what they can do with Malik Monk. I have little to no faith in free agency because why would I? Number one. And number two is if you're talking about the scenario of losing Malik, they can. James Ham does an excellent breakdown of this, but they can, with the money that they have and with the rights that they have for Malik, they could pay around $17.5 million per year for him. But if they don't get him back, they can only offer, I think, $12 million. They only have like $12 million of cap space that they can use to go out and sign free agents too. So I don't think you're getting a Malik Monk free agent replacement for $12 million or less. I don't think that exists. So, I mean, it all starts and ends with Malik, but gut feeling as of right now, I don't think Harrison Barnes is going anywhere. I think Kevin Huerter's gone. I don't know what the pieces are that you're getting back in those deals necessarily. And I think the Kings are targeting more of I'm using this name because of the Pelican situation, but a Herb Jones-esque type addition to this squad, I think is more what the Kings are targeting than a Mikal Bridges, Lauri Markkanen, Zach LaVine, other bigger names that Kings fans might be excited about.
Just because he's.
Oh,
yeah, I know. What about the other Bridges?
No thanks.
The
No
season's played out. Has anyone's opinion changed?
No thanks.
Nah, I wouldn't go down that road.
Okay. Just asking. Because I don't know what that financially for anyone in the league looks like. But just asking. It's out there.
Nah, I mean, I hear you. Look, you got.
And I understand, by the way, and I know how everyone felt, a year ago. I'm just asking.
Hey, you've got to ask the question as a broadcast journalist, and more importantly, I think that question needs to be asked in that front office.
Mm.
You can come to the same conclusion,
Mhm.
but you get Monty might go, hey guys, just asking, guys. I'm just asking.
Right.
What do you think about Miles Bridges? They may ask, nah.
That's also that's also one of those guys too, Matt, that you are discussing with your owner.
Yeah.
You're discussing with your leadership team. You're discussing with the heads of probably like 6 other departments.
Mhm.
You're talking to your DEI squad.
Yes.
You're talking to a lot of different people
That is
about a
complete-
signing like
is
that.
the definition of a organization-wide decision.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you even approach that conversation, you better have a game plan. And with all of that said, that what we just said might make it all not worth it.
Mm-hmm.
But if the idea is to get better, he's a solid basketball player in a potential position, in a position of need. But again, I get it. There's a reason he would fall into the price range of what Matt George was just talking about.
Right.
And that's probably not something a lot of organizations are willing to do.
Matt, I do want to ask. I want to ask you this as well, though. What you talked about with it probably being like a Herb Jones type guy or something like that. Do you think that's enough to get this team back to the playoffs? And I feel part of me, I haven't made my declaration of what the expectations is for this team yet. But part of me feels like you almost remember this past season. I was just like, just get to the playoffs. That's a success. Almost feels like you got to skip that step now. Get to the playoffs, win a series should be your goal. Do you think that just the Herb Jones type acquisition will be enough to have those type of expectations for this team?
It's a really, really good question to ask, KC, because like a lot of people are going to react to, and I got these reactions on the podcast too, to what I said about the Kings feeling that they don't need a star and think, what are you talking about? You're a long ways away from contending for a championship, which I agree. Like if you want to try and win a championship next season with how difficult the West is and the top of the East as well, you need to get another star. So if your goal is to win a championship next year, you have to do that. But I'm not saying Sacramento does not want to win a championship next year. I don't think Sacramento feels they need to go all in right now. So to answer your question, like Mike said it straightforward in the press conference. He said we should have won 50, 51, 52 games. We could have won 50, 51, 52 games easily. And he's right. Like, yes, there were a handful of games that the Kings won that maybe they should not have won. There were far more games that the Kings lost that they should have won this season. Like we talk about the losses to the bottom of the Eastern and Western conferences, the blown 20-plus point fourth quarter lead in Phoenix, the amount of double-digit leads this Kings team blew at home, the collapse in Milwaukee against the Bucks, and Dame Lillard hits that game winner. Like there are a handful of games right there that the Kings are, instead of at 46 wins, they're at 50-51, like Mike Brown talked about, and the Kings are sitting in the 5th or 6th seed and probably still playing right now. Like that's how Mike Brown feels. And Mike also is basing that off of the final third of the season is when the Kings figured out how to play the brand of basketball that Mike has been wanting them to play since he got here in Sacramento. So Mike's belief, and I asked him a question about like how sustainable this is, because a lot of what we've heard about, hey, the defense is different in the second half of the season or towards the final stretch because now the officials are allowing more physical play just like they do in the playoffs. I'm not fully buying that that's the only reason why the Kings defense got better. Yes, the Kings are playing more physical. So was the rest of the league. And the physicality in the first half of the season was what was getting the Kings punked. The Rockets out-physicaled them. The Pelicans out-physicaled them. There were so many teams that out-physicaled Sacramento early on in the season when the referees were supposedly calling the game differently. So Mike has figured out, or at least gotten his core group to play the style of defense that he wants to play. And he believes that's sustainable over 82 games going into the playoffs, to where, to answer your question, KC, they can secure a top 6 seed, secure a playoff series, and then go on to actually win that series when they get back there. That absolutely should be the goal. That absolutely should be the expectation. And the addition of a Herb Jones type player, the addition of more wing length, size, and athleticism is, I think, the biggest need for this Kings team as a whole to be able to avoid the 0-6 against a team like New Orleans, who has that in abundance. The blueprint of how to beat the Sacramento Kings was crystal clear. Have size that's disruptive on the defensive end, and on offense be able to space the floor and knock down the three. Why? Because the Kings were too small to close out effectively.
So that leads us back to what are we looking for this offseason? Someone brought up Nick Claxton the other day, and the thing that I really love Nick Claxton as a potential backup for Domantas Sabonis, and I don't think Nick Claxton loves the idea of being a backup for Domantas Sabonis. He started the last 2 years. He started every game for the last 2 years. But he's a physical guy, right? Like he offers some things that
He's
Domantas
athletic
doesn't do.
too, a rim protector. All that.
And I feel like he fits in that. But Matt, you bring up even more interesting questions. How much of I didn't really think of that. Obviously, the league changed a little bit in February. Took Adam about a month to acknowledge, yeah, we had to change the way we were officiating these games. And I didn't really attribute that to the Sacramento Kings' growth on the defensive end. But how they're able to maintain that will be interesting because everyone was saying, be average on defense, be average on defense, be average on defense. They were very literally average on defense, and they missed the playoffs. So is everyone back on the, you know what, forget it. Go back to 30th on defense and score 130 points a game. I think one thing that'll be the most interesting to Matt, as I kind of bounce all over the place here, is the verbiage that Mike and Monty use headed into next offseason. Their verbiage headed into the season. Their verbiage headed into last season was clear. Defense, no, we're going to run, contend. Okay, well, that didn't work. Now what are they going to be talking about?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a number of things. First off, like, I think the Kings feel pretty confident, and nobody feels bad for you, and there's no excuses or anything like that. But I think the Kings feel pretty confident that had Malik Monk been playing, they would not have ended up missing the playoffs and not have ended up in the play-in picture, because you didn't just lose a offensive weapon. You lost your second primary ball handler, and you lost your third best player. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm sorry, Keegan Murray. Keegan made jumps this year. Keegan is absolutely part of that core. This is not a Malik versus Keegan conversation. Malik Monk last season was the third best player on this Kings team, and it wasn't close. Like, it was Fox, Sabonis, and Malik. Those were the dudes. And the Kings, if they lose Malik, are going to face the same exact problem of how do we make that up? Losing Kevin Huerter as well, that's a tough blow, because even with Kevin Huerter's shooting slumps, he's a natural floor spacer, a natural three-point shooter that could have at least given you a handful of more points per game, even with his inconsistency, that could have made the difference at any point down the stretch. The Kings lost to the Suns by 1 freaking point, right? And that would have put them not in the play, or that would have put them in the 8th seed, right? So they would have played New Orleans in the first game. I don't remember how it works. I flushed it out of my memory. Regardless, like, I think there's that element to it, but there absolutely is an element of the defense improved. Offense is still the identity, and the identity was not consistent enough for it to be a concern or for it to be feared by the rest of the league. So do you find a way, whether it's personnel-wise, to be more defensive focused to where you can afford to overcome those poor shooting nights, or do you find the consistency offensively to be able to put up the 110 to 115 on a nightly basis that you need to win games? Because it wasn't just that, and I understand right now you look at all the scores that are 101 to 99 right now in the playoffs and stuff like that. I see that. But if the Kings were winning games down the stretch, scoring 103, 105, 107 points, I don't need them to score 120 per game. And Mike Brown has been against that for a long time. He said, I don't want to be that team. We don't need to be that team. It's not sustainable in the playoffs. And he's being proved right every single time a playoff game is played at this point. But if the Kings could down the stretch be 107 to 110 points per game every single night without the addition of a Herb Jones type defender, or without a quote unquote defensive roster, Sacramento could win on a nightly basis. So it's a balance, right? And I don't know how they're going to strike that balance, especially now that Jordy's gone.
So I would probably lean, surprise, towards bolstering that offense. Not saying you disregard getting a defender like a Herb Jones or something like that, but I would want to get to that point where I'm scoring 115 to 120 a night in the regular season. Because I think about this, you've heard me talk about this when you work out basketball wise. I'm use this analogy. They say when you work out and you're getting shots up and stuff like that, your goal should be to make 80% of your shots wide open, no defense. You should be trying to make 80% of the shots. And one of the reasons why you do that is because you figure when you get to a game, that percentage is going to probably shrink by 30%. No matter what you do, it's going to be 30%. So if you practicing to shoot 80% and that shrinks to that 30% regardless in the game, you shooting 50%, you cooking. You know what I mean? But if you practice thinking, oh, it's cool, I hit 60% while I'm working out, that 30% is happening regardless. Now that 30% gets you to 30% shooting. I bring that to the Kings saying, you scoring 120 a night in the regular season, it's going to drop in the playoffs. It's going to drop in the playoffs regardless of what you're scoring in the regular season. So if it's dropping 15 points, you go from 120 to 105, you still got an opportunity to win. If you at 95 a night, I mean, that's drastic. Nobody's 95, but you know what I mean? Like if you're at 100, 105 for the regular season, but your defense is on point, by the time you get to the playoffs, you're going to struggle to score and win games. And I think that you should try to make sure that offense is always a threat to go off. And I think they got defenders around there now too, with Keon and Keegan in the starting lineup. And if you do pick up a Herb Jones, where you can be good enough on the defensive end to compete in these playoff type games.
I agree. I think also, though, the threat of guys that can go off needs to come from the people who are guaranteed to be here. Fox is a threat to go off any given night, and he showed that. And there were a handful of games in the middle of the season, whether it was chucking up too many threes, he was banged up. I genuinely believe this too, and I do not use this to disparage Fox in any way. Fox has spent the majority of his career getting downhill and getting whacked under the basket. Like he is just getting beaten up. He's playing through injury every single season of his career. I shouldn't say playing through injury. He's playing hurt every single season of his career. To be the player that he is, attacking the basket like that with a slim frame point guard, like that's the realities of the game that he plays. So game 45, a Wednesday night in Minnesota, I don't necessarily blame him for going, I'm going to take 7-8 threes tonight and not get into the paint as much because I don't want Rudy Gobert to destroy me. I'm also thinking longevity too. I'm also thinking I'm trying to keep myself as healthy as possible for a playoff run. So like De'Aaron needs to be and is capable of being that offensive threat every single night. But the growth in that area, Casey, for me, comes from Domantas Sabonis, comes from Keegan Murray. If Malik Monk comes back, it continues to be with Malik Monk, right? And then you're trying to add, because I've played out this scenario in my head too. In my mind, guys, there's no way Malik Monk comes back to Sacramento and is not the starter, right? Like if Malik's coming back to Sac, he's your starting too. That's what he wants. That's going to be part of the demand. Then if you move on from Kevin Huerter or not, you have Keon as your backup 2. You have Davion as your backup 1. You can keep rotating their 3 guard lineups in there. This is why I feel like you maybe try and move on from a Kevin Huerter and get some wing help so that you have, because you don't want Huerter playing small ball 3 off the bench, in my opinion. Defensively, that's probably not going to work. This is why Huerter is the odd man out to me. So if you add more length and athleticism in that second unit that you can sprinkle in with your top guys and then demand more of Sabonis, you need more 20-point games, Sabonis. Keegan, you need to create your shot more and go get, and Keegan's going into year 3, guys. It's not like year 5, year 6, year 7. Keegan's only going into year 3. He's going to keep getting better. So that's where the more consistent offensive threat, I think, needs to come from your top dudes, and surround them with guys that are defensive threats that can space the floor and are those type of guys where, hey, if you're getting 15 from player X, and like it should be, if you're getting 15 points from Keon Ellis and 12 points from Davion Mitchell off the bench on any given night, you should be winning that game because you're getting offensive impact from these defensive minded players who are capable of spacing the floor and getting you buckets, but that's not what you're relying on them for, assuming Fox, Sabonis, Monk, Keegan, even Harrison to some extent, they're doing their job offensively.
Malik keeps coming up. It's impossible to have a conversation about the offseason without talking about Malik Monk. And you had a conversation with someone who covers the Magic. How bad is it?
So Malik is a big topic of conversation in Orlando. Absolutely no surprise there, right? That was the first question I asked. Like, how much is he being talked about amongst fans, amongst media members, amongst podcasters? He is a big topic of conversation down there. And Katie Christensen actually tipped us off to that over the course of the season, because I believe she said in the broadcast or during one of the broadcasts that she's had media members from Orlando. So when the Kings played the Magic in Orlando, she had media members from Orlando come up to her and go, "Hey, what's this deal with Malik Monk? Is he legit?" Like, they are very interested in Malik over there. However, I left that conversation with Philip Rossman.
Katie told them all to go to hell.
I'm sure she did. I think Philip Rossman Reich, the host of the Locked On Magic, I left that conversation actually feeling a little more hopeful, because what he said that really stuck to me, and I believe this wholeheartedly, is that the Orlando Magic will be hesitant to give Malik Monk more money than what they're willing to give Jalen Suggs, because they view Jalen Suggs as more of a core long-term piece there, even though he lacks the shooting that Malik would bring, and that team in general lacks a pure point guard.
He's an elite defender.
Exactly. He's an elite defender, and he's part of that core that's got you where you're at right now. He's loved there. He plays hard. Like, if the Orlando Magic were to be faced with a decision this summer, and they're obviously not, but Malik or Suggs, the belief is they would choose Suggs a heavy amount of the time and just figure out the point guard position like they're currently doing now, where Paolo Banchero is playing the point half the time, and they're figuring it out. So that leads me to believe, because this has always been a money thing for me, my number has always been $22 million, guys. Like, that is the sweet spot for me. That is the point of if I'm Malik and the Magic put a $22 million per year offer in front of me with the starting point guard spot on a playoff team in the Eastern Conference with no state income tax, I don't know how I could possibly walk away from that. But if that number is 20, and Philip said he thinks the Magic would hover more towards the 20 and even try and be in the high teens, like the 19 range, $2 to $3 million might not be worth it for me to walk away from familiarity, established role, relationship with stars, relationship with city, relationship with coach, understanding of everything the city and the team here in Sacramento is trying to do. All of that combines into one thing that is very difficult to walk away from for any player, even one like Malik, who has never really had security throughout his career and has never really had the money that he wants throughout his career. Like, security is important to Malik, and he tipped his cap with that, or tipped that off a little bit too, when he said, he answered the question straight up. He said, yeah, like, I could go chase more money and be in a worse situation. He's aware of it too. He's not dumb. Malik is very, very smart and very, very savvy to what's going on here. So, yeah.
You said something. It's something James said is like sitting in my head right now. Matt, maybe you can clarify this for me. We've been talking about 20 a lot, and how, like, 20 might not be, that might not be the number, like, that would really persuade him. And if you mentioned 2 to 3 million, I think it's important pointing out, unless I'm misunderstanding this, that's like $2 million for the entire contract, because Orlando or 29 other teams in the league can't give him 8% increases. So it's 20 times 4, assuming it's a 4-year contract. It's an $80 million contract. It's not $2 million times 4 years. It's, an extra $10 million. It's literally 80 versus like 78-ish.
Yeah.
Is that right, Matt? Like, other teams can't do the percentage increase. Only the Kings can do that. That's one of the incentives of, hey guys, stop team hopping.
Yeah, that's
hauling around and stay with your team.
That's a better question for James Ham, because he has a way better understanding of this than I do, and that's where Kings Beat is absolutely phenomenal, as well as, of course, the insiders here. But I think that's the whole point of the early bird rights, is your ability to go over the cap to retain players, and also a team's ability to just give that player a little more incentive to want to stay with the team that they found success with in the first place. So as far as I understand, I'm on the same page with you, D'Lo. And I'm looking at the chatty house right now too, and a couple people are bringing up the Spurs as well. The Spurs are an absolute other team on my radar to take Malik Monk. And on the surface, a Malik Monk, Victor Wembanyama two-man game, hell yeah. Sign me up for that. Like, we saw how much JaVale McGee and Malik had chemistry in the 17 minutes that they got together on the floor. Alex Len and Malik, Domantas Sabonis and Malik. Malik is one of those guys, very similar to a Chris Paul. Now, I'm not directly comparing the two of them, but similar to a Chris Paul, Malik is the type of guy that can get any big man paid because Malik's game makes bigs look good. Like that's just the type of game that Malik Monk has in his pick and roll in the two-man game that he plays with bigs. So on the surface, San Antonio makes a lot of sense from just a basketball standpoint. I don't know how much Greg Popovich is going to allow the freedom for Malik to be himself the same way Mike Brown does here in Sacramento, but that's complete speculation. What I do know is that the San Antonio Spurs are more than a Malik Monk away from being a competitor in the Western Conference. So if I'm Malik, and again, I'm only getting a few $1 million more, that this is the worst situation that he's talking about to me. You're getting the bag. You're a starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. You have a two-man game with Victor Wembanyama, and you're probably finishing 10th at best. Like, is that intriguing to you versus running it back with Sacramento, believing in what you're doing here, and expecting to be a top 6 seed next season? And that is and should be the expectation for the Kings.
I also, when people talk about San Antonio, I don't want to say I dismiss them. I think they're a contender. But number one, I think people overlook Devin Vassell. He's a hell of a shooting guard. Cheaper. He's kind of in the Malik Monk role. And I also listen to the chatter that's been going on a lot with Trae Young. And it seems like there's something going on there with Trae Young in San Antonio. And much like Orlando, what I've talked about, I think they would be looking at a couple of other players to acquire it in San Antonio before Malik Monk.
Matt George, Locked On Kings. Make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribing, and make sure you're watching. Matt George is a television star over on ABC 10 with our good buddy Kevin John. Make sure you tap in.
Casey, this is where you plug that you're going on 13 tonight, right? So
good. No, that's very nice.
I'm not going to be anywhere
tonight. That's very nice. No, that's good. No, check me out tonight. No, that's good.
Screw you, man.
Appreciate you as always.